In my previous video, I prepared an image from an original 360 by 360 color image into a pair of 1080 by 1080 black outline and color images, perfectly matched, so they'll overlay in Doodly. And this second video in the series then is about taking my process for taking those two images and creating SVG files that can be imported into Doodly and used. Okay, so for this work occurs in Adobe Illustrator, and so my first job is to bring in the black and white and color images, and we'll lead on from there. The first job then is to take the black and white image into Illustrator. It's going to be embedded in the SVG file, so I give it a name to keep it clear what it is, and another layer for the color image. They're not going to stay in the same file, but for the moment I put them in there because it makes it easier for me to do my job in Illustrator. Overlay them and leave the color one turned not visible. Now I create layers for several other jobs. For black and white lines, just because it's simpler if I do, I create a layer for the ring on the outside, but that for most images wouldn't be needed. Then a layer for revealing the colors, and another color layer, we'll see later how that gets used, another color layer for revealing the background that I don't want to take time to do in detail, but will display quickly at the end of the draw. So there are my layers. For easy working in Illustrator, I lock all these others and go to the lines. I only want strokes, and for my image I work at about 10 point and vary it if I need to. Turn off fills. Doodly doesn't support SVG fills, so don't turn them on. They will not work for you. What else do I do? I do my... The truth about all this is, because we're using embedded images and we want Doodly to display this accurately for us, we're going to do it by revealing the underlying image the same way that Doodly works with its internal path defining. So it doesn't matter what color we do our lines. In the end, we're going to make them all invisible, and the invisible path as it gets drawn reveals the underlying image. That's the strategy. So I separate my black and white and my color and my wide color with separate colors, just so that I can see what I'm doing when I look at it. It doesn't affect the end result. So it's red, I need to draw, and then I'm going to pull this off onto my tablet again. Okay, so here I am over on my tablet, and I now have to do, it's very similar, this process, to what you do in Doodly. It's just the path marking rules of Illustrator apply. But there are some things we need to do to make allowance for the way that Doodly is going to read it. When Doodly loads an SVG, SVG path, it only, at this point in time, it only loads path tags. So we have to follow some rules in how to path this so that it doesn't create other things like polygons and line tags. So what we've got to do is as we mark each section, we've got to ensure that we click and drag on at least one dot in a line segment. That will ensure that when it writes the SVG file, it will be a path tag. Trial and error taught me that one. You can use that, of course, to help you navigate curves as you're marking out everything. So this is the same. If you've done this in Doodly, this will not be unfamiliar to you. The order that you do this, though, is the order that it will be drawn when you get back to Doodly. So look at your image, think about what order you want things to happen in, and that is what will determine it. Now, don't use round-ended lines or anything fancy like that. Doodly won't interpret that. It will be the nearest match you can get is if you just use the default pathing in Illustrator. It will give you the nearest match on screen here to what you will see when it gets loaded and used in Doodly. Okay, so again, I'm going to go on and do that. I'm not going to take up your time, but we'll rejoin when I get to the end of this job. Okay, we're rejoining now just as I'm about to finish tracing the black outline through the image. I just wanted to show you this one last point before I finish. I've left these relatively sharp corners there. You'd be aware if you've done a bit of tracing in Doodly, tracing of paths in Doodly, that you often get sharp points sticking out when you turn a corner. You will get the same result from this if you don't take care on your corners. As I draw this out, why am I not responding? As I come up to this corner, if I do it just by doing this, see, I'll get the sharp corner. That will have a relatively unpredictable result in Doodly. That sharp corner may stick out a lot further. But I have found if I click and drag to make it curl the corner, then it will go smoothly around the corner in Doodly. And I do that all the way through my tracings. Okay, so that takes me to the end. I can quite safely now actually take that whole layer and make it fully transparent and lock the layer. I'm done. That's all I need to do with that layer. I'm done with it. I'll move up then to the ring layer, enable that layer. I'll leave it red, there's no reason not to, and I've increased the width of it just because it's easier to draw that way. Remembering that this only reveals the outline, it doesn't draw it, it only reveals it. And all the rest of the outline has already been revealed, so it only remains the outside edge to be done. The reason why I mark so many, I don't need to mark so many, but I do because otherwise the ring gets drawn so fast, it may as well not be drawn at all. So if I give it a few extra points, it'll still be fast, but at least it will be visible. And I know you can't see this, it's off the screen, but I just remark that, reselect it all and mark it to transparent, And now the ring is also done. I'll lock that off and I'll turn on the color layer and select the color reveal. Now it's up to you how carefully you do the color revealing. You can be really pedantic about it and take ages over it, or you can be rough with it and take what comes. And it takes loads of practice and experience to work out what you can and can't do. So really, see, that's I've now got 30 pixels wide. I'm going to say that's going to be way too slow to work at with a 30 pixel width. So I'm going to increase it up to, I'm going to increase it to 50 and see how that goes. Okay, and if you've done this sort of thing in Doodly tracing, well, it's not all that different. And look, it's reasonably reliable that what you see on the screen here is what you'll see when it's used in Doodly. Not perfectly so, but surprisingly close. Okay, again, I'll stop this because I've got to do this right across the whole image. When I finish this particular type of coloring, I'll drop back in again. Okay, so now my policy has become color in detail those items in the scene that are of primary importance. In a lot of images you're doing, that may well be the entire image, but in the ones I'm doing now, it's only ever part of the image. Color the things that are of greatest interest in detail, and then do the rest in a quick sweep, as you'll see in just a moment. That way the focus stays, the drawing focus stays on what the focus of the picture is, and it doesn't all just get evened out so that the drawing is equally spaced, so equally timed. So I'll in this case I'm going to do a broad sweep across the whole thing, so I can afford to make all of that detailed coloring transparent. Lock that layer, unlock the wide color layer, and here's an interesting thing. When you're working with SVG files, you can set the path width way wider than you can set in Doodly tracing. In Doodly, it's on a slider and it gets to a maximum size and you can't go any further. But if you import an SVG path, you can have a width much wider. So I'm setting this to 100 pixels in width, and it should be right. Usually I change the color. I should have changed the color earlier for the coloring, but it actually doesn't matter that much. So now I just sweep again. I use a lot of dots so that the drawing gets seen. If I could space this out and make it really very few dots to do this job, but you wouldn't see the background being drawn in at all if I were to do that. So I've settled on doing this. The fact that I'm going over the top of areas that have already been colored doesn't matter, because it's a revealing process, and what's revealed stays revealed. Big jump. Okay, everything is covered. Make it all transparent. Lock the layer and save. I saved it partway through already. I save this. This is just my strategy. I save it as master.svg, and as I said earlier, the images are embedded. That is really important. And save it. Now I'm going. Yep. All right. We're going to go back to our main screen. Okay. So here is the SVG file that I just saved. Now I'm going to open this in Microsoft Developer Studio. Like there is something special about that, but you could do this in any text editor that won't add formatting to your file and won't destroy the data that's in there. I'm just going to step through the SVG file. SVG files are readable. Embedded images. This is the embedded image of the color image, and further down is the color image. They're not so readable, but the tags in an SVG file are quite readable. The benefit that I get from Developer Studio is that the whole group, the black and white image group, I can actually fold it up. All the groups, SVG files are made of groups, and I can fold all of the groups up here. They equate to the layers that were in Illustrator. So there's my black and white image, my color image, my black and white lines, my black and white ring around the whole thing, the detailed reveal of colors, and the wide reveal of colors at the end. They're all there. So I am able in here to delete sections, and that's the beauty of this. The way I've done it, by putting both images in Illustrator into the same file, allows me to make sure that they are absolutely totally aligned correctly. So what I do, I actually don't use the master file. The master file gets kept as a record, a permanent record, and I take 2 copies of master, and I change the first one to BW for black and white, and I change the second one, change the second one to color, and I open both of those, in fact, in Developer Studio. And in the black and white one, I keep the black and white image, but I delete the color image. I keep the black and white lines, the black and white ring, but the color reveals I delete, and I save it. And that I now have a black and white SVG. And I do a similar thing, but with the opposite sections, the opposite groups. I delete the black and white image, I keep the color one, I delete the 2 black and white groups, and I keep the rest and save that, and there's my color SVG. And having done that, I can now import. So here's the black and white one, give it its name. Upload to the server, edit, load SVG paths, and look at that. All of that stuff that we so carefully traced, it follows it almost perfectly. It's quite flawless, really. Import the color one. Okay, then we just employ the usual for testing purposes. You just have to rely on the outside edge to be able to see that it's overlaid accurately. And I do believe that's about right. And this is just a cross check to make sure that what we've done is going to make sense. And there it is. The coloring is never perfect. Unless you want to spend your whole life on each image, the coloring is never ever perfect. You just learn your technique and get it as good as you can. But that is my method, and now I have one more image for all of that time. One more image in my collection, starting out from a 260 by 260 color image, finishing with 2 SVGs imported into Doodly. I hope somewhere in there there's something that might help you.